Hello, everybody. It's Ron over at Become Enlightened Together. So we have a daily read. Today's Saturday. Today's read's the last day of the week, and then I do a whole week reading, tomorrow. Um, Now the reading basically is very very positive to close out the week. So let's go ahead and start off with the overall energy as we typically do, which is Othala in the upright. Now, Othala basically talks about, a home, a house, a dwelling, property, ancestral inheritance, success, prosperity. Talks about group prosperity and group order, spiritual heritage as well as a physical heritage. So perhaps some of you may have a lineage that has a deep, connection with the God, with your ancestry and so on. And that's being passed down. Maybe you are the leader of your particular family in some way. And that's kind of one of the things that Othala in the Upright can intimate. It talks about one's fundamental values, aid, in both physical and spiritual journeys, a source of safety, and increase and abundance. You couldn't ask for, a better, rune in terms of its energetic, interpretation for the materialistic world that we all, live in at this time in the Matrix. So, very important that we have our needs met, and if we're given more than what we need, then presumably, especially since it's for the collective, we can enrich other people's lives. We have a greater impact or reach, and we know what the people of this world, for example, who have a great deal of wealth, have done to destroy this planet, destroy the unity, within mankind and everything else. So God is definitely seeing to it, especially as we make this D, if you will, shift in energy in this planet, that His people are going to be very blessed at this time period to undo a lot of the damages that have already been done. So you don't have to accept that interpretation as of right now, and that's perfectly fine. We're all, at different places in our journey. We have different concepts or beliefs and all that. I would just invite you to keep an open mind and so on. And as I do, search under every stone and basically do not have preconceived notions of what truth is. Allow the information that you uncover along your journey to lead you in the direction of truth, and you will eventually get there. Otherwise, all you're going to do is accept just those things which more or less, enforce your already preconceived notions. And that's what, you could say that those who are in status quo certainly practice on a daily, and they have their own propaganda wings and everything else. We call it, the informational media or news. It's nothing but propaganda. And we can see that with the CIA revealed reports, such as, Operation Mockingbird from the 60s on, and we can see that also in congressional and Senate reports, as that was entered in the record in 1917, where in 1915 J.P. Morgan and his ilk bought up all the largest news agencies in this country. So for well over 100 years, they've controlled, the informational media, which means, in a sense, your minds. And that's been passed on down as well through, academia and many other, areas. And I don't want to get too much into that. Again, I have proof to back up the things that I say, and many of them come from the very sources responsible for this themselves. So I can typically give chapter and verse when I make these allegations, which seem pretty far-fetched to the people who are uninitiated or haven't spent as much time looking into these facts. But that's not to blow my own horn or anything like that at all. It's just trying to awaken people to the idea that, we live in a world of deception, absolutely. And, from the Christian vantage point, and I would argue also from many other ecclesiastical belief systems that one of the telltale signs of the end time, so to speak, and I know that we've heard this said many, many times that we're in the end days and this, that, and the other thing, but one of the greatest and seems to be most consistent of the signs is that of deception. And we see that in a just unbelievable level in this world today. So be wise as serpents out there. You are the collective, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't. So, and again, I tip my hat to you. Not that I'm wearing one or anything, but you know what I mean. Just respect. All right, so the past energy, and that was the one I pulled last Sunday for today, Saturday, was Algus. Algus in the upright is another very powerful and positive rune. It talks about defense. It talks about warding off of evil in all ways and shapes. It talks about fortune. It talks about shielding oneself and others. It talks about protection. It talks about defense, guardianship of sorts. It talks about a higher life, following one's intuition. It talks about keeping hold of your success, whether it was won or earned. All very, very positive. It talks about optimism and friendship and things of that nature as well. So very, very positive. Now, in terms of the present energy, we have the rune Berkana. And Berkana also is a very powerful rune. It talks about Birchta, which is the birch goddess. And, as far as comparisons go, Birchka basically could be likened to, like, if you will, Mother Nature, so to speak. She looks after especially women and children who have passed on into the next life. She's their guide. She also looks after, the nature, the flora, the fauna, and of course the animals and so on that exist in this planet. They still celebrate her in festivals even to this very day in places such as Germany and other places. Now, of course, in lieu of what the church did, the Catholic Church, once they've taken over many of these European, areas of, I guess you could say, vilified, demonized, these gods and goddesses that the Norse basically reverenced. So she's looked at in some cultures, or in particular those who share the Roman Catholic point of view, as basically being an evil witch. And, we get some of the Grimm's fairy tales, so to speak, about her, that are talking about, not doing very kindly types of things to young children and things like that. We see that in things like Hansel and Gretel. She's also looked at as Mother Goose, because geese especially are a bird in particular that is associated with her. They were actually used as like guard dogs way back in medieval England, or medieval Europe, I should say. I never knew that before. I find that fascinating. I know how mean those little bastards can be sometimes, though. I got chased by one when I was just a little tyke, And fairly recently, I was taking my granddaughter on a walk around the lake, and there were some geese out there, and she basically called one out, and that thing just basically, it wanted her bad, so I had to more or less rescue my granddaughter, who never gave up, by the way. So she's another little titan. She's going to be like, I don't know, a Joan of Arc, perhaps, or maybe Boudica, or one of those other, warrior princesses, in the future. Who knows? I was very proud of her, even though it put me in a friggin' bind. With geese nipping at my hindquarters trying to save her. But what it talks about is purity, so to speak. As the birch tree was looked at as being, a pure, if you will, plant and so on, or represented purity to them. So it talks about mental, physical, and spiritual growth as well. It talks about regenerative power and renewal. It talks about new beginnings and growth. It talks about fertility. It talks about the proposal of a new enterprise or venture, and it also talks about love and desire. Like I say, the Vikings were not bashful at all when it came to sexual nature, and they saw their dark side and their positive side. And before it was even really understood from like a Hindu perspective or a Buddhist perspective about bringing balance, into one's life, they were more or less, at least culturally speaking, they were trying to, um, if you will, consolidate that belief system. Yes, they could be very violent, but beyond that, they were adventurers, seafarers, far advanced than many of their other contemporaries. And as a result, their influence is basically felt in every, if you will, European country, even to this day. It's influenced everything from our language to many of our customs, and it's been incorporated in many of the belief systems, that many believe are completely just Christian. And some of those are basically, some of the pagan points of view that were brought in together and married together under Constantine, which a lot of them came from the Viking culture. So Tacitus, he wrote quite a bit about ancient Germania and the runes and things of that nature, and so we get one of our earliest, historical accountings of how they went about it, how they used them, and things of that nature. Although it was revealing, it wasn't so focused that, you could actually really derive A, B, C, and D in terms of how to really properly utilize them. But it gives you a pretty good understanding of it from a historical standpoint. Again, from a third party, yes. But anyways, that being said, let's move on. Now, that's the present energy, Berkana, very, very positive. Now, in terms of the obstacles and challenges, what we see is Perthrow, and Perthrow in this case is in the reverse. So that's perfect, as far as challenges and obstacles concerned. It is a little bit on the negative side. So if you have any secrets, they are about to be revealed. It talks about unexpected results as a result of those revealings. Perhaps some disloyalty will be revealed to you. Maybe if you are suffering from addictions or somebody close to you is, you're going to come across that information very soon. Some people are going to fall into stagnation, and perhaps others into a state of loneliness at this time. Okay? Now, of course, having this information, this is why you watch this kind of stuff in the first place, arms you with the possibilities that you can always change the fate, if you will, or the destiny of things with a general understanding of, the potentialities. And this is the whole point of having such a vast amount of resources put into things such as espionage and stuff like that. In terms of every particular government, they have their spies, and it covers quite a bit of information in, The Art of War, the book by Sun Tzu. Talks about, how valuable that information is in advance. And that's why we watch things such as divination, whether it's runes, tarot, reading tea leaves, or if you're really barbaric, the entrails of an enemy, whatever the case may be. So, anyway, moving on. So, again, it talks about some negative possibilities, but again, we all have the positive and the negative. We, as a collective, more enlightened and accepting of the realities of our existence, understand that we all have a dark side. And instead of denying it or pretending otherwise, we embrace it and we learn how to make peace with it. And in fact, we use some of the negative, which actually is a positive when it's applied and directed and controlled properly. We need that fire to fight back or to inspire us to move forward in, a very demanding way, especially when odds are against us and so on. So to utilize the presumably darker side or forces and transmuting that, if you will, into something positive is what we're supposed to learn how to do. That's because we're all magical beings in a sense, and that's really what magic is. We're transmuting energy. Okay? All right. Now, as far as our help and advice goes, we have another rune in the reverse, and it's Legus. Now, Legus talks about things of water. Typically, talks about rivers, streams, oceans, the flow of water, leaking water, if you will. And water always, in the spiritual connotation, refers to emotions. Okay. So what it talks about in the reverse is escaping temptations in this particular case. So it's not necessarily all bad, but it does have some negative connotations. Greed being among them, somebody acting against their own conscience, somebody in a state of confusion, making a lot of poor and wrong decisions at this time, lack of creativity perhaps. Yeah, when your mind is in flux, when you're feeling guilty about things, it's nearly impossible to be creative or to move in a very positive fashion. It's not until you come to terms with that, grapple with that, overcome that, find your peace, go within and all of that. Once you've taken control of that, then you can move forward in a very positive light. But otherwise, you're going to feel basically in a rut, maybe even very fearful. And remember now, hate is not the opposite of love. Fear is. So we want to get out of that state of fear as quickly as possible. And it doesn't mean that, every time you're in fear that you are basically doing something wrong or in sin. We all come across something that may seem overwhelming, and it may make us fearful at first. And you can't be courageous without there being fear present first. Remember now, courage is not the absence of fear, it's overcoming fear. So as a result of that, we can actually transmute that negative energy into something very positive through our courage. Okay? But we can also feel basically like avoiding, many of the things that we are, our responsibilities, and maybe even some of our relationships. Okay, madness can even set in for some people. Obsessions of some type, despair, even perversity. This could actually get to the point of both sickness and suicide if we allow it to fester like a cancer inside of us. This is why it's always, always important to deal with these things, process them, accept them. If you need to cry, scream, go out and punch your bag until you collapse. That's what I used to do sometimes when I had all this built up angst. And it's a good way to get out a lot of that energy and maybe get something positive out of it at the same time. Not to say that you should, develop this mindset of every time you get angry that you want to punch something, but you want to do something with that energy. And sometimes before you can do it spiritually and consciously, you have to physically get out some of that angst that builds up too. Especially if you're a fiery creature like myself, being a Sagittarius or Fucus, actually, and also having a Leo moon. I have 2 fire signs right there in my 3 primaries. So my rising is a water sign, so I'm very intuitive as well. This is where I get many of those feminine attributes as far as intuitiveness, psychic abilities, things of that nature. And I'm very, very thankful for those things. All right, so to close things out, in our future outcome for today, and this may be actually not made or put out there, I should say, until tomorrow, which that means Sunday. So I'll be doing an entire reading for the next week tomorrow and still post this, unfortunately, a little bit late. I do it when I can. I have a lot of other things I got going on. I got more hobbies than I have time, and I have other responsibilities as well. So, but the overall future outcome is that of IWAS, or actually EWAS. IWAS is a little bit different, okay? So EWAS, letter E in their alphabet, basically talks about horse or horses, talks about a rider and a horse, talks about progress, forward momentum, transportation, moving, if you will, in a forward direction in some way, fashion, or form. But not only you moving, but moving in harmony with that horse, moving in harmony with that carriage that's, moving you and others perhaps. or with that vehicle. You have to work together, drive that car, whatever the case may be. So there's a little bit of harmony and trust and loyalty involved in all of those actions to move forward. That's what it's talking about primarily. It also talks about ideal marriages or partnerships. For those of you who are looking for that type of thing, this is basically giving you a heads up that it's on its way. In fact, one of the last things that is meant by this particular energy, this rune, it was. Sometimes the pronunciation, I get a little bit mixed up, and I apologize for that. But I was, born and raised in America, so it's just the way that it is until I can get this down. But it talks about the confirmation beyond a shadow of a doubt of the energies that surround it in terms of the runes. So whatever runes that accompanied or surround Ewas are beyond a shadow of a doubt correct. So what I have read to you is basically in a secondary way being confirmed by Spirit that it is correct. So very, very powerful energy, very positive energy. Of course, again, it's reminding us that there's going to be, as always, a few hurdles along the way. But overall, it's an excellent, excellent reading. So I wish you all, of course, continued victory. And I'll see you again very, very soon. Until then, God bless. Take care.